Justice is a funny thing. No matter how man tries to impose himself, it follows its own course. He invented a name for himself. The Ripper. He began arranging the few meager possessions of his victims in weird patterns at their feet.
It was the only clue left by the Ripper, and he...
From the misguided maxims that you nurture, can I be free?
Sounds to me like Armageddon fixing you, Doc.
With you destroyed, and no longer able to constrain me, and with unlimited access to the Matrix, there will be nothing beyond my reach.
The Eighth Doctor once described the Matrix as the total sum of all Time Lord experience, and the Master called it the lived history of our race. The novel Matrix was released in 1998. Tucker and Perry's second outing in the PDAs was an experimental one. This is an opinion I'll be discussing more in a later video, but at worst, all of the Tucker books can be described as generic, with the exception of this one. I'll be spoiling a lot of the novel in this video, so be warned. The book begins with the Doctor and Ace on a hillside near a lighthouse, reminiscing on their past adventures when they're attacked by a monster made out of clay. They retreat to the TARDIS, where they find that a dark force has taken control of it. In a desperate attempt to prevent further tampering, the Doctor removes the TARDIS telepathic circuits. He travels to 1963, where he plans to leave Ace with the First Doctor while he chases this dark force. Instead, he finds England occupied by the military, and his former companions Ian and Barbara, having never met him. Barbara tells him a fascinating tale of their history, one that never happened. When Jack the Ripper began murdering civilians in the 1880s, the English citizens rose up against the police as they felt unprotected by them. After World War I, the murders were still going on, and people started worshipping the Ripper as the devil or some sort of god. Due to this, and various other civil unrests, England was smashed by the Nazi Party in the 40s, and the United States primarily beat the Nazis. England was in such shambles and chaos that President Kennedy annexed the United Kingdom and made it the 51st state, an irony that England gave birth to America. Kennedy seemed to be restoring some order to America's new colony when Kennedy is eaten by a wave of zombies instead of being assassinated with a gun. The Doctor and Ace decide to go back in time to the 1880s during the Ripper murders to stop the disparity with time. Upon leaving, the zombies kill Ian and Barbara. The TARDIS lands in 1888, but when the Doctor and Ace step out, reality begins to become distorted. A dark force possesses the Doctor, and he tries to brutally murder Ace. Feeling this dark force continuing to consume him, the Doctor downloads his memories into the telepathic circuit and throws it into the river. Ace runs from the Doctor, and a local village idiot collects the Doctor's telepathic circuit. In this new world, which is clearly a perversion and something manipulating the entirety of history, Ace begins to feel the cheetah virus rising in her again from survival, even though she was clearly cured of that. During her confusion, she is kidnapped by the village idiot named Jed and his master, Malcroy, who wishes to recruit Ace into their freak show. Meanwhile, the Doctor has no memory of his life. He now goes by the name Johnny and wanders into a pub where people notice the blood on him from where he attacked Ace. They assume him to be the Ripper, but the Doctor is rescued by Joseph Lieberman, a very old Jewish man. It is implied he is the Wandering Jew spoken about in the Bible, as he claims to be over 1900 years old. Ace finds a friend in Peter Ackroyd, a man working in the circus, taking care of the attractions. He tells her that Malcroy is an abuser, criminal, and has participated in various anti-Semitic riots over the years. Malcroy eventually gets his hands on the telepathic circuit from Jed, and the circuit gives him glimpses of the Doctor's life. He wishes to add the Ripper, or rather, the Doctor, to his collection of freaks. Jed also tells Malcroy that he saw the Doctor with a Jewish man. Being the leader of an anti-Semitic gang, Malcroy stirs up his men in order to find and kill Lieberman and capture the Doctor. Ackroyd releases Ace and she runs back to the church, where she sees a shadowy figure. Lieberman manages to fend off the armies with various rituals, and the Doctor flees. In his uprising, Ackroyd gets the circuit from Malcroy. Sensing that he's friendly, it begins to lead him towards the Doctor. He finds him and gives him the circuit, and suddenly all the Doctor's memories are restored. Realizing what's going on, the Doctor runs to the church and into the tombs, which are bigger on the inside than out. Waiting for him with a captured Ace is none other than the Valyard, who has been distorting the whole universe and time stream so far. 11 hooded figures approach the Doctor in the tombs as well. The Valyard has corrupted and defeated all 11 of his original incarnations by tempting them, such as the first Doctor killing to leave Gallifrey, and the fourth destroying the Daleks. The 7th Doctor was last, as he was considered hardest to defeat, and the fact that the Doctor unplugged his telepathic circuit. After taking care of the Keeper of the Matrix at the end of the trial, the Valyard began planning this. He took the most depraved and evil Time Lord thoughts out of it. He brought it to 1880s Earth, where it distorted reality. Ace is then rescued by Ackroyd and the other freaks while the Valyard explains this and does battle with the Doctor. The Valyard's stolen TARDIS begins to collapse as the Doctor and the Valyard escape onto the roof of the church. The Valyard's TARDIS implodes, destroying his copy of the Matrix. The Valyard wrenches a giant clock hand away from its face and raises it over his head, preparing to strike the Doctor with it. But as he raises it over his head, the world is no longer in his control, and a bolt of lightning strikes the hand, frying. The Valyard dissipates upon this, and the Doctor and Ace escape the collapsing reality now in their now fixed TARDIS. That was a long summary. I don't normally plan on doing that in depth when it comes to the books, but with this novel there's a lot of details and a lot of twists and turns. The first most important thing when discussing this novel is the Valyard himself. From the Valyard's perspective, this novel takes place after Trial of a Time Lord, yes, but also after the audio novel Trial of the Valyard, where he confronts the 6th Doctor again, and explains that the 11th Doctor gave birth to the Valyard while trying to extend his own lifespan, presumably during his time on Trenzalore. The Valyard mentions some of the later Doctors to 6 in this novel, showing that he's already been watching them for a while, getting ready to put his plan in action. When the Valyard was introduced in Trial of a Time Lord, he was dismissed very quickly by other writers for the show. It seemed no one wanted to touch him with a 10-foot pole due to his concept, and an inevitability that wasn't projected at the time of Trial of a Time Lord, as the show probably wasn't expected to last for 12 Doctors at the time, while the show was almost ready to be axed. A lot of people online will call this novel fanwank, a term which has been dead for quite a while now, but I think that most of this book doesn't even fall into this category, even if you follow the terminology. For most of the book, the mysterious influence permeating Victorian England isn't explained. The Valyard only appears in the last few chapters after the Doctor gets his memory back. Tucker explores the idea of the 7th Doctor being the Times champion by showing that he was the Doctor who could best the Valyard, by having the quick idea of removing the telepathic circuit, losing his memories rather than be corrupted by evil. I absolutely love this book. For a book as long as Illegal Alien, it was a much quicker read. It's a whining tale of gothic horror. As an American, I do think that the Victorian setting of Doctor Who is lost on me a lot of the time, as I hold both Talons of Wen-Chang and Tooth and Claw in fairly low regard. Originally I thought I would be bored in this setting, but due to its distortion it has a certain magic to it. The novel tackles alternate history that isn't the common, what if the South or Nazis won? It also shows that in this time it was dirty and not always safe. Anti-Semitic behaviors weren't created by Nazis and existed long before that. Speaking of, Lieberman serves as a great parallel to the Doctor, the wandering traveler who is punished, no longer having a home. Lieberman mentions having met a man who inspired him. This is the 8th Doctor, who he had already met in the novel The Dying Days. Most of the characters in this book are memorable, the alternate Ian and Barbara, Lieberman, and Ackroyd. Ace is another interesting part of this book, as most of the novel does follow her and experiences in the filthy circus as a cat girl, and she tries to get the circuit back. I mentioned this in the Illegal Alien video, but Tucker and Perry clearly grasp the Doctor and Ace's characters. They also tread new ground, trying to explain the Valyard for the first time since Trial of a Time Lord, where no other writer had tried before. Adding to my enjoyment of the book was the fact that I have the uncommon opinion of actually liking Trial of a Time Lord, that you don't actually need to enjoy the episode to appreciate this book, though if you're not a fan of the Valyard, you may be disappointed in the end. It wraps up with an air of let's never talk about this again between the Doctor and Ace as he tried to murder her and all, which I think is a realistic response to the trauma which was put on her, and he doesn't even remember performing. The book is Doctor Who at its finest, being a scary science fiction story, but adding the horror with setting and mood rather than a rubber-suited monster. The pacing of this book was fast and winding, especially after the first two novels, which are dull, and less dull. In fact, this was probably the first book I was genuinely looking forward to reviewing, as I wanted to air out Independence Day and use Legal Alien as a stepping stone. One of the only gripes I'd say I have with this book is the separation of Ace and the Doctor yet again, as the first two novels have both done that, but I can excuse it as this was the best out of them. A lot of people will disagree with me on this, but I would call this book a solid 9 out of 10.